Good evening, everyone. We are so pleased to welcome you in our latest Green Solution webinar that can be adapted to your coming collections.
I am Cyril Bertrand, Creative Director at De Rigueur, and I will co-animate this session with Basile Yorka, our CSR Technical Manager. First, we will start with a reminder of key numbers that are actually not that recent, but that explain our approach and why we chose to discuss this topic today. To do so, I am giving the floor to my colleague Basile.
Thank you, Cyril. Hi, everyone. My pleasure to be here.
Let's talk about the context, the supply chain of fashion and its many impacts. In the fashion industry, every product goes through a 5-step value chain. It starts with the raw material, the fiber, spinned and assembled into a fabric that goes through all the production steps to become a garment. Then, the garment is distributed to the seller to be sold to customers before being kept, given, sold, or thrown away. You may know that each of these steps have a more or less strong impact on the environment. I will detail this impact through specific examples. About raw materials first, it is well known that polyester is the most produced fiber on the planet, more than 2 times more than cotton, which is the second one. 70% of synthetic fibers like polyester come from oil through a very polluting process. Also, during their life, synthetic clothes release plastic microfibers, the equivalent of 500,000 tons a year. Secondly, production steps have many different impacts on the environment. The biggest and most visible one comes from dyeing processes. Dyeing processes are the cause of 20% of the world's water pollution, and industrial dyes are composed of toxic substances like ethoxylates, phthalates, or formaldehyde, which end up in the water and put the workers' health in big harm. About distribution now. Fashion goods are often made on the other side of the world, and in order to deliver them quickly to the stores, to keep up with the fast pace of collection changes, transportation must be smooth and fast. For retailers and brands, it is cheaper to pay for fuel to transport clothes than to have them made locally. Airplane is the most used mean because of the speediness. The problem is that airplane rejects a lot of greenhouse gases, which are responsible for the global warming. Then, during their life, fashion products still have an impact. The biggest source of pollution resides in the washing process. We already mentioned microparticles released by synthetic materials in water, which are the main cause of ocean pollution. But cleaning products have an impact too. Depending on the detergents that are used to wash the clothes, they can contain perfumes and substances that are not biodegradable and pollute a lot, like surfactants, for example. They also are the cause of several skin reactions and allergies. Finally, fashion goods have a last impact after they've been consumed and used. In 2018, 80% of consumed clothes in Europe were thrown away by their owner. In that case, they end up in landfills or incinerators, and because of that, 4 million tons are destroyed in Europe every year. In France, each person buys an average of 9.2 kilos of clothes a year, and only 3.2 kilos are given to sorting organisms like l'Oreal. The thing is, 50% of these sorted clothes are sold to African countries in too big quantities regarding their needs. Because of that, a big part ends up in wild landfills. Finally, only 12% of European clothes are revalued through the second-hand market. Thanks to this data, we've seen that environmental impacts are everywhere on the supply chain. Unfortunately, they are not the only issue. Fashion brands and manufacturers also meet a lot of material losses through that chain. In addition of wasting a polluting material, these losses are also a source of loss of value. Facing that, our objective is to reduce the environmental impacts of these losses by exploiting them as raw material and giving them a new value. The main issues we identified related to material losses are the overstocks of raw materials, productions of cuts, and end of life of unsold goods. Unsold goods recently started to be a preoccupation for French companies because France just prohibited to throw them away. Firstly, about overstocks, it is said that unused fabric costs about $120 billion a year to the fashion industry. Concerning large companies, material overstocks can absorb 15% of the annual income. This fabric can also be stocked many years in bad conditions, be damaged by time, and end up unusable. Production of cuts now, they also represent big quantities. According to Reverse Resources, for one Indian or Bengali plant that produce an average of 7 million clothes in 1 month, 300 tons of textile waste are thrown away. It represents a huge need for creating value. Finally, unsold fashion goods have another impact on the brand income. Unsold goods can represent a rate of 4% of the company's turnover, and 2/3 of them are sold very cheaply through destocking operations. The last third are destroyed or recycled.
Okay, thank you, Basile. Now let's map the market to outline some initiatives that we identified to help reduce those major issues. This enables us to start with the sourcing platform NonaSource. According to NonaSource, we can see that around 5% of purchase volume ends up at dead stock. Why do we end up with dead stock? Because of the supplier's minimum order quantities, the MOQs, which means technical reasons and profitability for brands, because of false sales forecast. Usually we have around 8 and 12 weeks for the manufacture of the fabric, and often the orders are placed before wholesale presentation, and it happens that it flops because of the quality or color problems, or even due to a shift from the creative direction. NonaSource is part of DEAR, the LVMH Group Open Innovation and Entrepreneurial Program, which enables all LVMH employees across brands and regions to propose and transform an idea into a solution to invent the future of luxury. Nona can be seen as a circular commerce platform which proposes high-quality resources at very competitive prices. Their goal is to revalue dormant stock by buying them back from LVMH houses and putting them back into circulation. They are not a marketplace because they own the stocks. Nona allows to retrieve that stock from all LVMH brands with all the information on the materials. This transparency, and that's important, it reflects the excellence of the sourcing of the houses. All the inventory is online and visible to everyone, and they buy everything the houses sell and then they sort it. They do not put it on sale if the quantity is too small, but they also have some partnership with school to help them to sell the fabrics. To give some key numbers now, Nona, it's about 1,000 color references, 1,075 meters of fabric available online, and 90,000 meters of fabric sold. Their goal is first to address service issues for the group's houses, to help them manage inventory. Second, to help the young designers seeking for raw materials. And third, to add a contribution to the circular economic system. Generally, they work to educate the houses to no longer see inventory as waste, because now these raw materials are starting a new loop, being at the beginning of the loop. So today we can say that Nona helps bring transparency into a practice that was, until recently, really opaque. Giving to Nona is becoming an action that is now claimed by some houses. Now, based on the same model, Adapta, which is another sourcing platform, select for its clients high-end leather and recently textile that are lying dormant in the stocks of luxury houses and associated suppliers. From a customer perspective, Adapta offers solutions for brands looking for material. They source from luxury houses by performing quality controls to see if they can exploit the material or not. From a supplier point of view, the company does a traceability control of the material, and they do not resell to resellers who could, for example, make counterfeit products. That's important. About traceability, Adapta also collects information about the producer of the material, the composition, etc. However, they do not transmit the name of the luxury house, and they do not accept any material if they do not have all the required information. The company operates two types of services, either customized sourcing for major accounts or in the form of exclusive sales, which allow them to reserve a number of items that they will then market. They place an order with a major company and then distribute to several independent customers. Now, here is some KPIs about Adapta. We can see that they sell up to 300 square meters per color and 1,000 linear meters per color on textiles. They have over 550 customers, ranging from small artisans, designers to more established brands, such as Printemps. In 2021, they sold 700 square meters of leather, mainly in Europe. So just to have a quick overview of this platform, this slide gives a good representation of the way they are positioned. And there is also a new name that we not mentioned earlier, but that they exist and they do basically the same work. Another option that allows better stock management is trend forecasting supported by AI. According to AD Magazine, 80% of environmental costs and impacts are defined in the early stages of the product development process. This is why we thought about mentioning Eurytech, which is a platform where fashion brands can clarify their vision of their market via images, analyses, and forecasts. As Vogue said, Eurytech has turned social media into an artificial intelligence tool that predicts the development of trends. So Eurytech could be of interest for companies seeking to reduce overstock. That's why we thought about them. Such a solution allows to avoid declining trends with accurate forecast and better demand planning. Basically, how does it work? The company has developed a technology combining the science of AI with a fashion expert. They analyze millions of images on social media to spot key trends worldwide with a 1 year forecast. Their methodology is done in 3 steps. First, they are looking at what consumers and influencers are wearing. Then they apply their image recognition technology to detect fashion details. And finally, processing the data with their own forecasting algorithm, predicting what's coming next. They own an online platform providing a data-driven trend forecasting for merchandising, product, design, and marketing teams to get predictive analytics on market trend dynamics and consumer segmentation, as well as inspirational mood boards to help their clients build their collections. Now, let's switch over to production leftovers. According to the Reverse Resources study, we learned that more than 20% of production waste is reusable material. So first of all, how could we not mention the well-known Hermès Petit H when talking about leftovers? As a pioneering workshop, Petit H creates a useful, rare, and precious object from the scraps of the Hermès house. Petit H is one of the first circular initiatives in luxury, as the workshop was created in 2010 by Pascal Mussard. Pascal Mussard is the former co-artistic director of Hermès, and it was based on a simple concept to recover unused material from all the Hermès universes and from the other brand of the group, which are P4Cat and the Cristallerie Saint-Louis, to make new objects in limited series when they are not unique pieces. The next initiative is a project that we developed by ourselves at De Rigueur de Green. This project aims to create recycled buttons from cotton waste. We first recovered production scraps from a company that offers an on-demand textile production service. Then we contacted an industrial startup that offers new and efficient material thanks to an innovative process of powder metallurgy called flash sintering. This technique allows to design enhanced and eco-responsible materials to produce hard parts. Finally, we called upon an industrialization partner offering a custom-made service to bring the desired finishes to the product. But we will develop this later. So as we just saw it, there are many options to create value from leftovers. As a global overview, 3 of them are represented in the diagram on the left. We can create brand new original products from this waste, reduce this material into powder to create haberdashery pieces, or even using it as thermal insulation component, just like the company Pierre Plume does. We also learned that Saint Laurent uses their own scraps to isolate their shops. Well, finally, let's have a look at how unsold goods are managed. To start this chapter, we thought it appropriate to mention a quote from Orsola de Castro, co-founder and creative director of Fashion Revolution, who says, "There is no such thing as an environmentally friendly way of burning clothes." Many of these pieces of clothing contain components such as synthetic linings or zips and buttons that are plastic. You can burn plastic, but it doesn't become ash. Harnessing energy is not a really good excuse because producing them in the first place is very energy consuming. It just doesn't make any sense. And also, according to ADEME, at least 4 million tons of textile are destroyed every year in Europe, but a new law intended to limit this waste recently came into effect in France, beginning of 2022, the Loi ALGIKNIT. So Let's start with the Braderie, a private sales platform, which defends the idea of a more responsible and affordable fashion by recreating desire for forgotten pieces. They offer brands destocking operation that have the advantage of offering a qualitative presentation of the product, but also of reaching a younger audience, and at the Braderie, which is around 27 years old. The two main arguments are therefore the protection of the image of the brand, and the rejuvenation of the customer base. So the Braderie has also recently launched a C2C port on their own platform called From You to You, which allows the customers to resell the product they bought on the platform. And just as number, the company operated 33 million euros in sales in 2021, so it's quite big now. Then the RESORTEX initiative, which is a startup that develops heat-dissolvable stitching thread and thermal disassembly systems that make textile recycling much easier. Thanks to their solution, we can imagine a better end of life for the clothes with an associated after-sales service, maybe allowing to repair the parts, as for example, the lining. So we will soon be reaching the end of this part. So let's finish with a zoom out on those two ways of creating value from unsold products. First, by creating new products from the old ones, or by creating ephemeral sales intended to a younger audience. And of course, we did not mention second-hand initiatives, such as the well-known Gucci Vault, for example. Now, Basile, let's talk about our methodology.
At De Rigueur, our vision follows the 3R statements and is organized around reducing, reusing, and recycling. To face the material loss issues, we can provide management solutions, innovative material development, life cycle analysis, or advices about manufacturing processes. We believe solutions are various, and we try to master them all, so we can provide fashion brands the ones that are adapted to their needs. Our methodology is simple and takes 5 steps. First, we do an audit about the issues brand can be confronted to. Then we identify the nature of the stocks involved. After that, we proceed to an investigation to find the largest number of solutions. Our work often implies the development of new technical and industrial processes before the project can be kicked off. Then we follow and manage the project until its very end. Now let's illustrate our method with 2 of our projects. I will start with an internal project we already presented in a previous webinar, the buttons made from recycled cotton. Cyril just mentioned it in this webinar, but I will now deep dive into it. So to contextualize, this initiative is the result of a triple observation in the manufacturing process: the loss of economic and ecological value of waste, and the 2022 Loi AGEC that Cyril just mentioned. The technical obstacles to recycling hard parts are due to external disruptors such as buttons. The petrochemical nature of the materials used for certain haberdashery components impedes the complete recycling of a garment. From this observation, and as we were inspired by the Adidas Futurecraft look shoe, we wanted to create a single material product that will have a similar approach, which is, first, identifying a sintering technology, a technology usually used for metals, which allow them to be crushed, reduced to powder, and then re-injected into molds to make new shapes. Secondly, reusing this process by adapting it to cotton fibers. For the fabrication process, we had 3 steps. First, the grinding, which corresponds to the reduction of the fiber. The technique of fraying allows all fabrics to be transformed into fibers in order to create new materials. Then the sintering. Flash sintering consists of agglomerating powders and thus obtaining high-density plates. We tried this densification without addition of binders or additives to have 100% cotton. It was very important for us. The challenge was to obtain a material as dense as possible. We tried several times with 100% cotton, but the result did not reach our expectations because it was too brittle. Actually, the best option we found was a 50-50 melt of cotton and acetate. Finally, shaping the buttons. This part is about obtaining a finished result for the plates by shaping or milling them. We've done tests of resistance to abrasion, washing, and humidity. The reception of the first plates revealed one main problem. The cutting of the buttons inside the plates caused a loss of material. We therefore reviewed our procedure to remedy this with a rework using a mold approach. The objective was to create molds of 6 or 15 pieces in order to start from micro pieces directly. It should be noted that the more densified the material, the cleaner the cut will be. Now I will give you details about the project we are currently working on. This project concerns a high sport brand which is concerned about its massive use of polyester fabric. As I mentioned earlier, polyester is an oil-based fiber and 40 million tons of it are produced every year. Polyester is not waterproof by nature and hydrophobic properties in sportswear come from water repellent treatments. These treatments are usually PFC-based. PFC means perfluorocarbon, a synthetic substance that also pollutes water and environment and that is cancerogen and an endocrine disruptor, according to Greenpeace. We were mandated by that brand to substitute polyester and PFC-based treatment by sustainable materials to develop a waterproof, breathable eco-textile. Our objectives are to stick to polyester lightness, resistance, and breathability, to find a way to make it waterproof without using PFC, and to obtain 140 to 160 grams per square meter fabric. For now, I can only show you a few leads that come out of our study. The first one, I think the simplest and the cheapest one, will be to use recycled polyester from oceans plastic waste and add PFC-free treatments that are as efficient but don't last as long as the regular ones. The fabric will have the same performances but will still reject microparticles in water. Another lead is to use cellulosic fiber from natural materials, fibers like Tencel, Pyratex, Cicel, or oil fiber, which comes from orange juice wastes. These fibers are less resistant than polyester, but very light, so we can spin a thick yarn and have approximately 150 grams per square meter fabric. This fabric will be softer and have a better moisture absorption than polyester. For the coating now, a product like Bionic Finish Eco would fit. It is without fluorocarbon and it does not affect the feel and the appearance of the fabric. The weaknesses of that lead are the chemical solvents used in the making of cellulosic fibers. Some of that fibers are more sustainable than other one. The other weakness is the price, which will be higher than the first lead. The last lead I've talked about, and the most extreme one, I would say, is to use a natural and highly sustainable fiber like hemp, a plant that grows very easily and doesn't need any treatment. The idea will be to mix it with a bit of GOTS certified cotton to add softness and moisture absorption, and to weave a high density fabric with it. Hemp is a natural thermoregulator, so heat and moisture will be evacuated efficiently. In the weaving, if the weaving is tight enough, the fabric will have natural water repellent performance basis and wouldn't need much treatment. The issues of that kind of fabric will be its weight, more than 200 grams per square meter, and its high price, which will be higher than the second lead. If we now get back to our methodology, we can see its different steps illustrated by the steps of the first project I mentioned, the recycled button ones. Here, the audit phase was an inventory of a stakeholder analysis about cotton for production wastes, which led us to a solutions audit to find which product or service could benefit from that problem. Then, the study phase was an investigation about the sintering process to transform cotton waste into powder. Finally, the proof of concept, POC step, corresponds to the buttons idea with 3D modeling and mode realization in order to produce them in series.
Well, thank you, Basile. Let's now explore a selection of innovation that may be used in the future for better eco-conceived products. To finish this presentation, we chose to highlight 6 different innovations that we sourced in order to give you inspiration. And to start, we thought about DYECOO textile system, which is a supplier based in the Netherlands, proposing water and chemical-free textile dyeing solutions. They are a research organization that looks at using CO2 to solve problems of various industries. The technology of DYECOO sounds quite futuristic. A machine pressurizes CO2 until it becomes supercritical, which is a state in which it gains a very high solvent power, according to the company. The dye dissolves in CO2 and gets transported deeply into the fabric's fibers. Thanks to this method, there's no need for water in the dyeing process. Also, no additional chemicals are used, while as much as 98% of the dye makes it to the fabric. So the machine works in a closed loop with recycling 95% of the CO2. So we can say that the whole process is basically close to wasteless. Still about dyeing, we found COLORIFIX, which is a biotechnology company based at Norwich Research Port and developing a sustainable method of dyeing fabrics that could reduce the environmental impact of the fashion industry. The company uses synthetic biology to engineer microorganisms so that they can produce, deposit, and fix dyes directly onto textile. It is a sustainable dyeing process that reduces water and energy consumption while completely removing the use of petro and toxic chemicals. That's kind of revolutionary. They mimics the nature and the bacteria, uses bacteria to make dye. So we can see that they already work with the brand Pangaea, and they can be dyeing polyester, nylon, and cotton. They can also apply it throughout different stages of the production, from yarn to fabric to final garment. Finally, COLORIFIX can save around 49% of the water used in the dyeing process for cotton. And finally, about dyeing, we wanted to highlight Air Ink, which is a patented brand of ink that turns air pollution into black ink in clothing printing. We can wonder what's wrong with existing black inks and what is the relative environmental benefit of this new alternative. Simply put, traditional black ink is created by burning fossil fuel. So since we are already doing that at a rate that is seeing carbon concentration in the atmosphere double every 20 years, it makes sense to sequester this carbon from the atmosphere instead. Each liter of Air Ink replaces about 30 to 40% of the same carbon black pigment. Also, there is the health benefit, of course, of sequestering the fine particles instead of letting them float in the ambient environment. And then they are locking the carbon onto a printing product. Air Ink also partnered with Pangaea for a capsule collection, replacing the printing of their logo with their technology. Now, Basile, you can highlight ALGIKNIT, which is about yarns, right?
Yeah, thank you very much, Cyril. So I'm going to introduce you ALGIKNIT, which is an American lab based in New York. They develop sustainable yarns from kelp, an organism that grows very fast and generates itself efficiently. The yarn are easily renewable, recyclable, and biodegradable. Today, ALGIKNITs are able to produce a continuous filament with high performance like silk, which is quite impressive. Still, they didn't scale up yet, so they don't have the capacity to produce big quantity. Their material seems very convincing and deserves to be followed closely. About recycling, ATKO Planning is a Korean factory that produces recycled spun yarns made from leather offcuts. Yarns are made through a process that doesn't use water nor toxic substances, resulting in various colors, structures, and shapes. The leather scraps are collected from the proven leather tannery and applied to the production according to the strict quality standard. It can be applied in various fields such as clothes, leather goods, shoes, or car interiors. They also develop yarns according to the needs and demand of their clients. Finally, I wanted to talk about 3DTEX. So 3DTEX is a French knitting lab that produces knitted clothes from 3D files. Their expertise consists in converting 2D patterns into 3D modelizations of the garments, which are adapted to their knitting machines. Then the garments are knitted in one piece and doesn't need any cut and sew step. The process doesn't generate any offcuts, and the company proposes a selection of locally and eco-responsible sourced materials.
Thank you, Basile. So as we are coming to the end of this webinar, do not hesitate to follow us on social medias for inspiration, advanced statistics, and latest product innovation related to the fashion industry. And finally, to book a dedicated pre-audit to overview how we can accompany you in detail, do not hesitate. You can email Valentin using the following address, valentin@derrigueur.fr. We are now coming to the end of that presentation. Thank you for watching it.